Uh, in order for us to be able to do a few of these effects that I'm going to show you shortly, let's pull them up now so you can have a look. Essentially what you're going to be doing is you're just going to be imagining a still image as a shot. Okay, so that's the angle I'm going to take here in terms of animating these stills. So this can mean a simple zoom in or a pull out, just using simple animation, to something more complex like a tracking shot to a dolly zoom, and finally a good old-fashioned pull focus. Okay, so these are just things that you can do in the motion tab that bring your still images to life and bring them into the kind of the video realm. So video is a visual medium. It's all about creating diversity of shots. It's about creating movement, and that movement can be anything from tracking to dolly zooming to pull focus and all of that kind of stuff. Now, in order for us to be able to particularly be able to do the pull focus, first of all you need to understand how filters work in Final Cut Pro. Now, filters are available to you in your effects tab, and filters can be accessed in here. Probably the easiest way to do it is to have the video filters tab open, and you'll see all of the different ones here. Now, when you add a filter to an object, such as a blur filter, all you do is drag it down onto the clip and then double click to load that back up in the viewer, where you can now use the filters tab. Now, the filters tab allows you to select and delete, it allows you to switch on and off, and it allows you to adjust the parameters of a particular filter. Now, what you'll notice on the right hand side then is that you have your graph. Your graph is going to allow you to change the parameters or the properties of that filter over time using keyframes. So filters aren't just dropped on an object and left there. Filters are used dynamically, such as what we'll see in a moment with the pull focus effect. Now, it's important to understand how multiple filters work on objects really before you go any further. Now, this mightn't be relevant for what we're doing today, but in future, if you're using more than one filter, then you need to know how they interact with each other essentially. So let's say, for example, that I have my Gaussian blur filter here, and I'm going to up the radius of that to a nice high number. You'll see the graph increasing on the right. So it's quite blurred out now at this stage. So if I was now to go back into my filters and, for example, use a basic border, drop that onto my object now. Load that up in the viewer and up that so it's actually being applied to the extremities there if you want. So I'll bring that down in size so you can see the entire border. Change the color to red just to make it easier to see. Okay, so that is a border being applied after a Gaussian blur. Now, in the filters tab, the filters are essentially rendered in a top-down fashion. So when you do something like applying a Gaussian blur filter, first it's going to be at the top of the pile. It's going to be rendered, and then the border is going to be applied to whatever has already been rendered before it. Now, you can change the order in which these are rendered. So if, for example, I now get my basic border and drag it up above the Gaussian blur, you'll see that what happens now is that the border is applied, rendered, and then the rendered result of the video clip and the border is then blurred. Okay, so remember that. It's pretty simple to remember. It's a top-down rendering process. So the first filter is applied, the result is rendered, and then another filter is applied. Let's use bloom for example this time. Not a good example because you won't see it applied too much on the border. So I go back down to the where's it gone? Blur. And that is going to blur the rendered result of my video clip and its filter. Now I could, if I wanted, go back and put another border on it, just to further illustrate what's going on here. And you'll see that that is now a nice sharp crisp border because it's being applied on top of the rendered result. It doesn't get blurred because it's not part of the Gaussian blur render. Okay, so that's just applying modifying filters. Now there are so many filters available to you that it's not really worth anyone's time to go through them one by one, but you can look at them as being broken down into a number of different types really if you want. You have things like blur and border and channel, which are, well, blur and border and glow and things like that, which could be seen as being kind of aesthetic types of filters. Then you have things like color correction, which is very much and sharpen, which are very much about image quality, about getting the image quality up to scratch and doing simple color grading and things like that. You have things like perspective, which are more graphical in nature, and then you have things like time, which actually are interesting from what we were looking at earlier on, in that you have the ability to change the playback of frames in a different way. I'll just show you an example here using a piece of video. Okay, I don't want to use that. I'll just drag a clip in. Actually, Long's the surfer clip would probably be the best one to illustrate this. Drag that in. So this is playing back nice and smoothly in real time, but when you get an effect such as strobe, what strobe does is it gives it that kind of edgier look of removing frames and playing it back at less of a frame rate. So you get that kind of intentional stuttering or strobing, as it's referred to. Okay, so that's just another example. And then in your filters you have key and matte filters then, which are used for compositing. So they really are filters, is kind of a very umbrella term for effects that can be applied to a video clip for a variety of reasons, but the important thing to really understand is how they interact with each other when you have them applied.